he's pretending to be crazy. And
Right.
after doing therapy with him, I realized that he wasn't actually crazy, but he was pretending to be. And I had to confront and be like, yo, you're not really crazy.
What's up? Welcome to Breaking Through the Darkness, where we smash ignorance in the face and break the stigma surrounding so many mental health issues today. Today, we have a special guest, actually our first ever guest on Breaking Through the Darkness, Mr. Fred Quarter.
Frederick Quarter, but my artist friends call me that guy. And I'm the writer and creator of Pockets Full of Pills, an indie comic book company spanning between Manila, Philippines and the Washington, D.C. area.
And we're going to be talking about mental health.
One of the reasons why I jumped at the chance to be on the show, and I want to thank you for having me on, is because other than my comic book chops, I am a licensed mental health counselor. So I'm licensed to diagnose mental health in the Maryland area, and I have a master's degree in clinical psychology.
Nice. Yeah, I was so surprised to hear that. I mean, we'd see
Yeah,
each other
a lot of people
on...
don't know.
We'd see each other at the convention, the comic conventions, Comic-Con, Comic-Cat, but I had no idea you had this mental health background. Tell me a little about yourself and like what you do.
So I graduated from Howard University in DC with an undergrad in psychology, and then I ended up going to Bowie State in Maryland and getting my master's in mental health counseling. And I went and I started working for the prison system in the Washington, D.C. area, juvenile prisons. So in the U.S., when you get locked up, you get the benefit of sort of getting a general psych eval to make sure that you're not too crazy to be put into general population. Because the last thing you want is, to get drunk and belligerent at your house and get arrested, rightfully so, but be put into a cell with like a cannibal.
Yeah.
Like that's it. You don't want to go into jail with more issues. You don't want to come out of jail with more issues than you came in.
Oh man.
So what they called it was sorting. So I would sort of sort a lot of the prisoners to make sure that they were in the right place. And that was my job for off and on for about 5 years. Like I did group homes, I worked in the prisons, I did chart reviews, I did case management. So it was all around sort of sorting the mentally ill within the indigent and the incarcerated population in the DC area.
How did you get here to the Philippines? I mean, yeah, if you were
Right.
out there and on the East Coast and other side of the world, what's your story? How'd that happen?
One of my bosses, I had several, but one of my bosses was like, look, you need to get a hobby, whatever it is, artistic, athletic, whatever it is, get a hobby. We're paying you enough money, put a little, be serious about this hobby, whatever it is, because the burnout rate is so high for this job. And it's making my job harder as your direct manager, because every 6 months, I have to basically train someone for 3 months, because after 6 months, that person leaves. Like it's untenable. So whatever you're into, take it seriously, because you need something to just de-stress. So for my whole life, I've been into comic books, and my cousin and I were big comic book nerds. So I after that talk, I was like, oh my God, I completely put the whole comic book thing aside because of work. I need to grow up and get a real job and go to real school, all the things that 80s babies are taught. And now I got my boss telling me I got to get a hobby. So I came to my cousin, who was an artist in the family, and I was always a short story writer. I said, look, this is our break. I'll bankroll the whole thing. I'll make it into a real legal company. We can make comic books. He agreed. I started Pockets Full of Pills in the US, and probably about five or so months into it, he quit. He completely quit on me. I had everything. I had paid all this money and got it all ready, and he quit. I had all these scripts he's supposed to draw, and I was just simply complaining to a friend of mine. I went to Catholic school, so I had a lot of Phil-Am friends, and I'm complaining to a friend of mine, and he was like, "Dude, hire my cousin." And I was like, "Who's your cousin?" And he's like, "My cousin's a great artist. He lives in the Philippines." So I ended up hiring my friend from high school's cousin. And then it was just sort of a slippery slope. I kept meeting new artists in the Philippines and hiring them. And then before I knew it, I came here for a big project. And about 11 years later, I now live here.
Wow. So let me get this straight. You took up making comics as a way so that you wouldn't get burnt out from mental health.
Right. And now it's my full-time job. I still do mental health, though. Don't get me wrong. I still do it.
All good. Yeah.
I'm outside of my region. So in the US, you get licensed by like region, like state or city, depending on how your area works, because you have to be locked into certain social services. Because
Oh,
the psychology or psychotherapy, it's all about someone comes to you with a problem, they agree they want to engage in psychotherapy. You then
yeah.
break them down and rebuild them up the way they see fit, because
Wow.
normally what's wrong with you is sort of deep embedded into your like your personality, your defense mechanisms. So you literally have to open the hood and sort of like remove the carburetor and get down to that core, pluck it out, and then put it back together. Okay,
Wow.
but this is all done with the patient's consent. It's like, I want to get rid of this childhood trauma I can't deal with. So the problem is that if you're breaking somebody down, systematically to address something that they're not able to personally,
Yeah.
there's a good chance they might be like, screw this, and walk out the door. And you have to like call
Man.
the police or call like services, because you're like, hey, look, I got someone to confront their childhood trauma. And in the middle of like repackaging them as an adult, they left. They're talking about they got a gun. And like, I need to, so ethically speaking, that doesn't happen a lot. But ethically
Okay.
speaking, when you really confront someone's sort of inner demons, which is what psychology is supposed to be about. And I use the word demon in a secular way. I
Of
don't mean it
course.
religiously. But when you deal with someone's inner demons, you want to be tapped into resources in the area, just in case someone sort of has issues and needs sort of emergency services. So because of that, I just do life coaching. So on the side, so psychology is now my side business. I do life coaching with a few clients, and that's where we
Nice.
just do like goal setting and identifying things in their life that might not be compatible with their said goals, and sort of working that out. It's less clinical, so I
Mhm.
don't need to be tapped into like emergency services.
Yeah, and it's more positive. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
coaching, right? It leans towards that positive psychology where it's not about like
right,
healing, it's not about the negativity, but like you want to
right.
bring out the best of a person, like make them flourish,
Yeah, it's more like you're
potentiality.
you're like a cheerleader, right? You're their
Yeah.
cheerleader. I always say life coaching is like Jiminy Cricket in Pinocchio, because Jiminy Cricket wasn't
Oh.
real. Yeah, he's
Oh
not real.
yeah.
Even though Pinocchio's not, Pinocchio arguably shouldn't be real, but the one that's
What?
an imaginary friend in that story is Jiminy Cricket. He's
Wow.
supposed to be like the super
The inner
ego,
voice. Yeah. Oh yeah.
right? He's the one
Same.
kind of like cheering him on, saying, "Hey, this is not what you want to do. Are you sure?" So we're more like that, life
Nice.
coaches. Mhm.
So how did you get into mental health counseling? I mean, what training did you have to take, and why did you choose this path specifically?
Well, I got into it honestly. Both of my parents are physicians, so they're both pediatricians. So I grew up in like a doctor house, and my parents are like, "You're gonna be a doctor," and I was like, "I like to tell stories," and they're like, "You can do that while you're a doctor." So slowly but surely, that tug of war of me being sort of a conversationalist and a storyteller, and my parents wanting me to go into medicine, led to a love of psychology.
And
Yeah.
how about the training? How did you get
Mm.
into the training of it? What does it take to be a mental health counselor or professional?
So you have to go to undergrad degree. You have to get an undergrad degree in psychology. So you get your undergrad degree, and then after college, 4-year college, you go into a master program. There's a lot of different master programs in the U.S. for psychology. Psychology is such a it's like nursing almost, where it's like there's so many different types of nurses.
Oh yeah.
So for mental health counseling, you need to go and get your master's for 3 years, 3 years of actual school, then a fourth year of like internship.
Oh
Okay, where
wow.
you're actually on the job, talking to people that have actual issues sort of in the field, and you have someone over you signing and saying this person's using the right practices, the right techniques. Then after that, you graduate, and then you do another 2,000 hours after you graduate.
Wow.
Okay. And then you take a test to get licensed in whatever state you're in.
So that's a couple of years. And wow.
Yeah, I mean,
Crazy.
other than college, it's roughly, if done straightforward, it's roughly between 5 to 6 years of
All
training.
right. All right.
Mhm.
So what was some of your like notable experiences doing that out there in Maryland, the United States? I mean, of course, with like confidentiality and all that, but like,
Yeah, notable. It's the most notable thing is helping people. When
yeah,
someone comes to you with a problem and they completely get to self-actualization, because that's what
wow,
psychology is all about. Psychology is not about telling someone they're crazy or making them okay. It's not about fixing someone that's weak. What it's about is It's about having someone get to the point where they're honest with themselves. And that's a very difficult thing to do.
For
Most
anybody.
people, even the most healthy people, tell themselves several lies per day, which their whole life and personality is built on top of. So self-actualization is where a person's able to confront the lies about themselves, things they say they like, things they say they're okay with, things they say they enjoy, um, and or being real about situations that happened to them in the past and not a fictional version of it. Having a person say that that wasn't right or that's true about me, that's the most rewarding thing.
Wow.
If you might want to know the craziest thing, I think it's what you're really asking. It's the craziest thing. But I just explained was like the warm and fuzzies. Like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I helped you. But like sometimes it doesn't go that way. Sometimes it's hot and spiky. Uh,
Hot
uh,
and spiky. I like that.
yeah, I had a guy who, very interestingly, he got himself into the psych ward, okay, in DC, and I won't say which ward I was working out of. I'm working a psych ward, like a criminal psych ward, basically the equivalent to Arkham. Okay, so I'm working there, and this guy, he's pretending to be crazy. And
Wow.
after doing therapy with him, I realized that he wasn't actually crazy, but he was pretending to be. He had like read something online and figured out how to be crazy. And I had to confront and be like, yo, you're not really crazy. You got all these other people fooled, because there was a racial component. There's a lot of stigma around African Americans, and they're like, oh, there's something wrong with them. So he was able to sort of play the racial bias to
Oh,
get
wow.
himself put into a psych ward. So then I really started to get down to what was wrong with him, and it turned out that he was a gangbanger. He was actually out in the street banging, and he had MS. He was slowly deteriorating,
Oh.
and he realized that he wasn't able to defend himself on the streets, and people were coming to kill him, and he couldn't move. So he figured the best thing to do, given he had no other life skills other than being a gangster, pretend to be mentally ill to survive the winter.
So that's
Yeah.
that's his shelter. That's his protection.
Right. But
Oh.
that led to a whole nother element of like, okay, you're not crazy in the way you're pretending to be,
Yeah.
but you have a lot you need to deal with to try to sort of come to self-actualization. So that was probably the most interesting.
So how would you compare like the mental health situation here in the Philippines with what you experienced there?
I won't go into too much detail, but I was a school counselor in the Philippines for a brief moment. Yeah. And I remember, and I won't say where, I remember I quit because I did notice that there was a huge stigma around mental
Wow.
health. And even though it wouldn't have come back to bite me in the butt as far as like the ethical oath that I took, like you can be disbarred for certain things. I found that the desire to not treat children, to try to make them just seem okay and just sort of pass them along, instead of actually like getting parents involved and treating them, things that could be nipped in the bud if confronted at an early
Yeah.
age. The motivation was counter that. It was, they're fine, their parents are good people, they come from a good family. Why would you say this about them? They believe in God. And it was like, none of that's relevant. Like,
Yeah.
So I had to get out of the psychiatric field here in the Philippines because sort of that conflict of wanting to help the patient versus wanting to maintain a status quo.
How do you think that could change? I mean, I know it won't be instant, but like, what? How can we change that kind of mentality? And
There's every culture has their certain biases. I'm not Filipino, obviously, but I've lived here
but you
long
have
enough
fresh
to
eyes.
actually.
You can see it from the external in a way. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I noticed and that I learned in school, because we take like multicultural counseling, but like it's different learning it in the book and seeing it. There's a lot of communal identity here. So a single individual is not an individual. And that helps immensely in the Philippines because like there's that safety net.
Right.
Someone gets sick, someone's going to take care of them. The mother-in-law, as she gets older, she knows she's going to be taken care of. If a kid's sick, they're not going to be put into a home. Like it
Yeah.
works in a lot of other social contexts. But when it's time for someone to deal with themselves individually, their mental health, that becomes a problem because it's then a reflection, a poor reflection on the family, even though it has nothing to do with the family.
Yeah.
You know, and you get resistance because you start trying to say, hey, this girl is bulimic. Oh, well, her mother loves her. It's like, well, I didn't say her mother didn't love her. Matter of fact, I hope her mother loves her. So, because I want to bring the mother in and we can address this. And it's like, well, why would you bring the mother in? She's good. And I'm like, no, no, no. The point is the girl is bulimic. And I would like to nip that in the bud before like her teeth rot out, you know, and she gets esophageal like scarring. Like we can nip this in the bud. Like, where did this come from? It could be a simple misunderstanding when they were too young to understand. I think one of the cases that actually dealt with here was exactly that. And it was, I think the father had said something to the girl about, you're getting too fat. Okay. Father had said, you're getting too fat, while the girl was pretty young. I mean, you know, like 6 or so. She was a daddy's girl. Daddy said that, then daddy left. Daddy moves on, get a divorce. He leaves the family. So the girl is stuck with this last statement, this parting gift from the father, you're getting too fat. It's something that you probably say to a kid, you know, if they are legitimately getting too fat, but you have time to be there as a parent to clean up the bad parenting. But the dad left. So now you have like a 13, 14-year-old daughter, girl, who now is bulimic because she believes her father will come back if she loses weight. Right. And so that's one of those things that's kind of like innocent mental illness, where the father's got his own issues, you know, but it's one of those things where you just put it in that context. You're like, oh, I get it. Nobody's sinister. Nobody's evil. No one's bad. It's just regular people living very normal situations. It's just affected the kid in a way that they're psychologically a little confused, and we can work it out. Or we could wait till she's 30, you know, your teeth are meth mouth and like she hates everybody, you know, so, but they didn't want to address it.
It reminds me of like, you know, that Christopher Nolan film, Inception. It's like how like one little phrase, word, gesture, like
right.
planted a seed of a thought that like transformed the identity or a psychology of a person, of a young child or adolescent.
And that's one of the things that people don't realize. A lot of mental health issues can come from very normal things. It's just people internalize things differently. We're all different. If we all weren't different, then we wouldn't have individual skills. We wouldn't have artists and writers and dancers. Everybody's got the same body basically, but somehow some people are athletes and other people are writers. You know, some people are mathematicians, some people are soldiers. They're dealing with the same body. They're starting at the very, you know, biologically similar place, but they're different. They're dynamic. So people don't realize how external things can just sort of filter through a person, can come out in unhealthy ways.
Yeah, like going back, like, how do you think we can change this? Like shift the paradigm, or the whole people that we're trying to change, or the whole world even.
It's a slippery slope because America suffers from over individualism. You know, the situation with the mask wearing. The reason why America, the wealthiest country in the world, is suffering the most from coronavirus is because everyone's like, I'm an individual. I don't want to wear a mask. It's like, you could save other people. What about me? And it's like, well, you know, you got to help yourself too. You know,
breathe.
You're trying to, you know, you're oppressing me. And it's like, no, we're trying to save the country of me. You know, so you don't want to push the culture too far that way. But of course, there's the devil's in the details. So I think what could be done, my advice as a non-Filipino living in the Philippines, is to get rid of the okayism. There's a lot of okayism in the Philippines. How are you doing? Okay, naman. And it's like, but are you really okay, naman? It's okay to say you're not okay. Matter of fact, that's the most okay thing. You know, but there's a need for like the okay naman, because people they think they're being disrespectful to let them know, I'm having a bad day, you know. My kids are acting like jerks. I just need a second to breathe. Like, you know, these are things that people are thinking but they can't say because it's culturally taboo. And I feel that if we kind of break that down, there's a lot more communication and people don't guilt themselves into suffering in silence.
As a writer, how important is it to be able to tell our stories? I mean, especially now in our times with like Black Lives Matter and Me Too movement and mental health awareness. How do you think, as a creator, as a writer, we can help, you know, contribute to this kind of narrative?
I think this art is one of the purest forms of self-expression because it's an entire world coming from one person. And everyone needs to understand they have that in them. Even if they're not a writer, what you see coming out of writers is not unique. They're just able to package it better. And when people can realize, hey, I have a whole Narnia, I have a whole Oz inside of me, that, then they can say, all right, I've got good and bad sort of impulses, and it's okay. I should just, my story is what's most important. I'm not bad. Oz isn't bad. It's a whole story, and people sort of view themselves as sort of a well-rounded story. And I think artists can sort of bring that out in people to say, hey, it's okay to tell your story. It's okay if you have dark thoughts or positive thoughts, or you can be a whole person. It's wonderful.
And I think that is a great way to break that taboo, that stigma we were talking about earlier, because hearing another person's story, seeing them like being open about it, like we can easily relate to that situation. Like it's like that kind of strength in numbers. Hey, that guy's going through the same thing I'm going through. Maybe it is okay. I can share that I'm not okay, that I'm feeling a little blue today, or life is cruddy or crappy.
And I'm just thinking of, now you say that, I feel art is cathartic. That's the only reason why people consume it. You can't eat art. You can't. Art is for all intents and purposes worthless, except that it's cathartic. Yeah. And that's why people find it as one of the most valuable commodities in humanity. I mean, we didn't have the internet, but we had cave drawings. So like art has been part of us since like before fire. We were like, man, I got to write this down. I got to get it out. So these buffaloes are getting on my nerves. I need to draw something about these buffaloes. So I think when people look at how they're drawn to comics, how they're drawn to, the media that's derived from comics, whether it be The Walking Dead or Marvel, they gravitate towards that good guy that they want to be like, or they wish they could have in their life, or that bad guy. And I think that the Black Panther movie, and that's what just sparked my mind when you said Black Lives Matter. I think the whole conversation inside the Black Panther movie really gave extra legitimacy and extra light to the Black Lives Matter movement, because that whole movie was a conversation about the oppression of African peoples and how it was seen as something that should be tolerated. It's no big deal. It's not as bad as it used to be. Leave it alone. To no, it's really bad. You've been ignoring it. Yeah. And since you have a tendency to ignore it, I should just burn your house down, because I can't rely on you to actually give me the satisfaction of change and acceptance. So it was that conversation, and people went to the movies and saw it, black and white, in every race. Right. And they were kind of like, oppression's kind of screwed up. And I think people are telling me that it's okay until I have kids and I'm dead and they tell them it's okay. Like, I think I should break something. So like, so you start seeing all these, like, because Black Lives Matter was all across the world with like a lot of non-Black people. And I think from the Black Panther movie, people were like, oppression needs to stop right now, and it can't happen incrementally. It needs to stop now, or we're going to Killmonger on you.
What's great about that movie, like Black Panther, is it didn't just like stop that like a kind of victimization view. Like it went on further. Like, what can we be? Yeah. Like, how can we like transgress this? How can we like evolve and adapt and even be better and stronger from this? So,
and that's the power of art. Not to just get fixated on that movie and what that movie represented, because we have a whole other show about that. But that's the power of art. That's the power of
stories. It's a fictional story. It was sci-fi practically. It was
super sci-fi.
Fantasy.
Yeah. It was like, what's it called? Afrofuturism. I think it's the subgenre. But all of a sudden, people are talking. You have people, having rallies in London. Even here in Manila, it's like people are like, I don't want to be oppressed. And I think that's the power of stories, because what it does is it stops the okayism. Yeah. When you see someone in a safe space, which a story is safe. It's not real. It's not really happening, but you are engaged in it like it is. You're jumping, you're screaming, you're talking about it the day after like it happened to you, but it's not real. It's safe. So it's an outlet. It's cathartic for you to say, that person punched that person. Why did they punch that person? Would I have punched that person? Do I have anger in me? How do I deal? So the story can be sort of a mini therapy session.
Film, yeah, that's like, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do on this channel too, using visual stories, like be it graphic novels, comics, or short films, documentaries, but speaking the language of like
Hmm.
art, like films,
Hmm.
comics, and all that. Yeah. How do you think like our work as comic book creators or any kind of creative, be it a blogger, artist, YouTuber, like how can they help or how can we help with mental health?
The biggest thing is saying it, because the Me Too movement, what happened earlier this year and last year, nobody said rape was okay. Nobody thought sexism was okay. It's just that people start being like, hey, it happened to me. And then it's like, yeah, okay, that's bad, but they want to ignore it. But then another person said, hey, that happened to me. Another person goes, hey, that happens to me. And then you start getting more people with an audience. Angelina Jolie, that happened to me. I'm like, whoa, Angelina Jolie, I like her. She's my favorite character for my favorite story. So I think what it is, it's shining a light on it. And I think storytellers and people that do art, they have the privilege of having an audience, no matter how small or big it is. They have an
Mm,
audience. An individual person typically doesn't have a fan base, but every single artist has a fan base, even if it's just your mother. Like having being an artist means you have a fan base, if you're lucky. And so by shining a light on it and saying, hey, this is normal. This has happened to me. This is something that happens to people and it's okay because that's life, and not okay in a it's okay, don't deal with it, but
yeah,
it's okay to talk about it. It's okay that it's
right,
not okay. It's okay to say you're not feeling well. And I think the more people repeat it, because Me Too
right.
didn't get more powerful, it got repeated. And then finally people were like, you know what? I'm not scared to say that I've seen sexism. And then you start getting the men saying, you know what? It's not their imagination. I've seen it before. And I think that's how you break down the stigma, any stigma.
Wow. And so as like creators holding an audience or a platform, I mean, we almost have like a responsibility, like
Yeah.
Spider-Man. I mean, with great power comes great responsibility. It's
Hmm.
like it's our imperative to like say something, do something in this space, lest like,
Yep.
like for evil to continue, let the good keep silent.
Yes, exactly. And I think story writers are already talking. So there's
Mm,
no reason for us to be silent. Our job is to make noise. So
right.
there's no excuse. It's not okay, but it's understandable for your accountant. No matter how popular your accountant is, how successful they are, it's okay for them to, relatively speaking, to not say anything. They're accountants. But for artists, people whose job it is to get eyeballs and get attention because they're expressing their inner psychology, it's important for them to let people know psychology is not taboo. Everyone needs it. It's an important part of life.
Last question, or second to last question. What advice do you have for others who might be interested in mental health counseling, or for
Mhm.
creators and advocates like myself who want to normalize conversations about mental health and help break the stigma? What advice can you give us?
Well, what I would do is I would look up in your local area, um, therapists in your local area, mental health resources in your local area. Get that information and plug it. Just say, hey guys, these are local numbers you can call, because a lot of it has to do with access. Somebody can say,
Yes.
okay, I agree psychology is real. I believe that it's not my fault that I might have internalized things incorrectly and I built a whole life and personality off of that mistake or that misunderstanding. But how do I get help? So you want to try to do that research. It's minimalistic. Just a quick
Hmm.
Google search and find those resources and plug those resources on top of your message of psychology is okay and everybody needs it. No matter how good your life is, you could benefit from just sort of talking things through with someone to help you organize your
Wow.
thoughts.
What's great about that is you don't need a degree in psychology to do that. I
Yeah,
mean, right? I
right.
mean, everybody has access to all this information, and we're just
Yeah.
becoming like a bridge.
And let people know it's okay to talk. Because a lot of psychology starts with openness. People
Nice.
seek help because they're willing to be open. It's okay not to be okay, guys. Matter of fact, being a little disturbed is helpful. It's just that it's not, as far as art is concerned, but you don't want it to be a handicap. There's what we use in psychology is adaptive and maladaptive behavior.
Hmm.
Adaptive behavior are things that benefit you. No matter how weird they are or quirky, they benefit you and those around you. Maladaptive are behaviors that you have become habits that actually work against your happiness and hurt other people. So you want to make sure the things you're doing help you and help your community at the same time. And that's a good way to see if you might have something you want to work out in psychology. Say, if are my habits healthy and are they healthy for other people? And if not, why can't I stop them by myself? And if you can't, then you might say, you know what? I think I might need to talk to somebody.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, like for me, like doing this YouTube channel or podcast and even doing comics about like suicide or schizophrenia, like I did it like for myself, if anything, first. Like, I mean, it was a way to kind of like you said, cathartic experience. Like I needed to get out of myself, but then like the kind of result of that is like other people were like touched by it or were affected by it.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, it's
that goes back to that responsibility.
Yeah. Awesome.
You realize that people are getting something from you as an artist that helps them.
Lastly, what are you working on now, Fred? Like, you got any current or upcoming projects?
Yes. We just released our, I got right here, a little plug. We just released some of our new, oh my God, I think Sparkles has rabies. And I'll send you images. This is our Tylenol variant. So you can get these, you can get these bad boys by going onto our Facebook page and give me a message directly. And we just got into Tenacious Toys in Brooklyn, New York. Wow. So they carry our product there. So we are.
I'll put a link too in the description. Yeah.
Yes. Nice. So go there and order, or tell your friends to order, share. We just finished The Suit / the Machine, Volume 3. So this is our little Suit / the Machine right here. So we just got his Volume 3 done. Nice. So check that out. That should be coming out. And all of our comics can be found at Secret HQ at Comic Cat. We're pockets full of pills. Comic Book Studio.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that episode and got a lot of value out of it. If you haven't subscribed yet, go hit that button right now. And please drop a comment below and mention what eye-opening insight you got out of this video. My comic book, Suicide Girl, exploring issues on suicide and depression, is also available now to read for free on penlab.ink, a new online comics platform curating some of the best works of today's Filipino comic book creators. You can go check it out, as well as the other awesome titles out there on PenLab. Until next time, reframe your mind.